Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is a short astrology update where I would like to speak about certain aspects that are quite influential in the present moment, and they can also be quite fated because of other celestial conversations that they hold with each other. I'm gonna get into details in just a little bit, but one of these players is Venus, and she just freshly entered the sign of Leo, which means immediately she holds an opposition with Pluto. Now, this isn't on its own a very rare energy. Venus opposes Pluto around once every year, so it's not really a big deal on its own. However, this time around, on one hand, Pluto himself is in relatively fresh territory of Aquarius, and Pluto himself is at the beginning degrees, just like Venus. So it's this energy, whenever anything takes place at the beginning of the sign, usually between 0 and 2 degrees, that energy, regardless of what planet or what um, energy we're speaking about, it does hint something new, initiation, progress, a bit of a chaos, but the chaos in a creative sense, creational sense, uh, in order to bring a new situation, a new state. So even if it's like a rather disruptive energy, let's say, the disruption usually is meant to create way, make way, set up one way or another something new. The same thing is very true at the end degrees of a sign, just that those favor either endings or culminations or a big moment of conclusion of some kinds. So the disruption, the chaos, the not so nice things usually will make way for the endings there or for something to meet its culmination, basically. But now it's at the very beginning of the degree, so it's trying to make way for something new. And the aspects that actually make it more fated than usual, because whenever Pluto is involved, that can very well be a fated energy. Directly, indirectly, consequentially, etc. But no, when we're speaking about Pluto, usually the hand of fate is present. But besides Pluto, so Pluto himself is holding sextiles with Saturn and Neptune at the beginning of Aries. So Neptune at 1 degrees and Saturn already retrograded back to 0 degrees of Aries. Both of these planets are aiming back into Pisces, but that later on. They're still in this very beginning degrees of Aries, and especially 0 of Aries is the most one of the most important degrees of the zodiac because it's the alpha, it's the beginning. It's when anything non-real, for example, from the realm of Pisces, the previous sign, dream, thought, spirit, ether, anything like that in Pisces is really just an illusion, just a whisper, just something in the borderline of real and not. But when it enters 0 degrees of Aries, that's already real. That's the first breath. That's the creational degree. In 0 degree of Aries, even if it doesn't have any body, anything real, concrete yet, it's still submerged in the realm of concrete real, meaning that one way or another, at one moment or another Saturn time, right, it will become real. So that's why this is so very, very important. So the sextile, especially with Saturn and Neptune, means owning something in our lives. Usually it's something inner, because all of these planets except Venus are retrograde. So it's something inner, or what life taught us. It may have been very much something external at one point in the past, but now it's inner and we need to own it, be the rulers of it, sovereignty energy. But it's not so easy because usually what we own are result of, well, Saturn, things that broke us or strong sacrifice work. There was a lot of pain attached to it and a lot of disempowerment at one point. And with Neptune, well, Neptune is the emotion, the feeling, both our relationship with fate herself, how we feel towards fate and existence, our interpretation of it. You might say, well, isn't that Jupiter? Yeah, but in a deeper way, it's also Neptune. And this conjunction together with Saturn and Neptune, well, it's really what we make with what we make of our lives, what we make of our survival, what we make of the self and the self's role or integration, or maybe the opposite of it, isolation from creation, the whole, right? So sextile with Pluto again, those lessons, those moments of big realization, because those are self-mastery ultimately, those give us power, those give us something. In Aquarius, well, usually it's in the higher mind. So again, we cannot distance ourselves from the realm of not necessarily philosophy as a discipline, philosophical thinking rather, higher thinking, the realm of the spirit, faith. But faith, higher thinking, it has to make sense. It's not blind, Capricornian type of ritualistic faith that is imposed, learned rather, but it's real. Our faith muscle within our being. And Aquarius, and according to the ancient, was the a place of the good spirit, inspiration, benevolence, moving to the ultimately hopeful future, right? That's Aquarius. Pisces was the shadowy type of spirit, so, you know, so Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius, that's the power here. In modern terms, we must, not can, but rather must, include technology, interhuman connections, the power of masses, the collective mind, the collective psyche, etc., etc. We can't aside the realm of science, empirical science, the Uranian energy, so the concrete, the real numbers, facts, things that we cannot ignore. However, with Neptune in the mix, it needs to have a higher meaning. And finally, we get to Venus. Well, Saturn and Neptune trine Venus. It's a fire trine. Venus in Leo. Sensual, sexual, creational, but also heart energy. What is rooted in passion, in love, in sometimes lust, but when I say lust, it's like the pathos lust, a more sacred version of lust. Because just the feeling urges and stuff like that, that's more in the realm of, well, shared Aries, but really Scorpio. That's when we feel it in the organs, Scorpio. So Leo is, now let me word this correctly, maybe not necessarily the higher octave of all of that, because the higher octave is different type of love, right? Elevated love. So that's not necessarily Leo. Leo includes that too, but it's not the fullness of Leo. So not necessarily higher octave, but rather a more uh Venusian expression of it, because Venus rules Taurus and Libra. In Taurus, it needs to be real, so Leo likes to have a real element, but Leo also needs the higher meaning element. Not higher meaning necessarily, as I said, in a divine way, but in a playful, uh, heart-based, passionate way, yes, absolutely. So Leo type of sensual sexual energies do need the passion, do need something more than the body, than the organs, even the hormones. They need a bit of playfulness. They need a bit of, ultimately, Leo Aquarius axis. They need the Aquarius too, the opposite sign. And the Aquarius is exactly that higher meaning or that higher feeling that elevates everything. Not in a divine, spiritual, philosophical way, but more like an energetic way, more like the love of life way, the fun of life, the joy of life. Sometimes it's innocent, like the inner child, because that's the purest expression. Other times, not as innocent, but hey, adults need to play too, right? So that's Venus in Leo, and she opposes Pluto. On its own, it's that time of the year when we feel a bit powerless, when something makes the heart feel a bit restricted, a bit not all that courageous. I'm not risking, I'm not, how should I say, not cover this energy, because cover this would need Mars to be in the picture, and Mars isn't directly. But rather, it's not worth it energy. Not cover this as such, but when really it's not worth it, and it doesn't matter what the heart would like to do. For example, be courageous. Venus, the worth of courage and bravery and expressing the heart, right? But with Pluto, it says, no, it's not logical in any way, shape, and form. With Aquarius, right? The highest octave of intelligence. It's not, no, it's not gonna do every path, a logical, beneficial path leads to not risking, stepping back, for example. So that type of energy, when Venus is confronted by the no value. However, this energy can play out in a different way where Venus can be powerless, even in the sense that she's sucked into something. When something is so appealing or so makes her totally powerless, she's sucked into it. The heart is sucked into it. This is where, like, when a fisherman goes fishing, the lure is irresistible to the fish. So that's like Pluto fishes Venus, right? It can feel like a very, very powerful attraction, a very powerful something. So with Venus in the picture, well, as I said, it can feel very unpleasant. For example, this is any typical way that any opposition Pluto Venus plays out is power dynamics in a relationship. Sorry. Who holds the decision making priorities? Who this, who that, I don't need to get into detail. Or with Leo, who takes care of the children more? Or there's these examples, but it doesn't need to be just like a romantic relationship. It can be any type of relationship where Venus is it worth it or not. Alliance, friendship, even contract. Because Leo is creational energy. It's not directly work, labor, etc., but with Venus in the picture, how much of your creational energy are you investing? And Pluto in Aquarius, it can also represent, well, interhuman connections, groups of people, groups of friends, ideologies, politics. So, for example, an ideological movement or whatever, current, etc., that you've been a fan of very many years, all of a sudden, bye bye. Something happens, you get burned out, or the love turns into repulsion. Well, in the world of politics, now, especially in the now, we see that happening everywhere, everywhere. I don't even need to exemplify it. But this can represent a very good example for this gamers or people who really love gaming. There are certain games which gamers are naturally fan of many years. They're huge. The fan type of energy is huge. And the game or company, or put it into context, makes a mistake or really messes up the franchise. And the love, the passion, the support reverses immediately. This is how a gamer falls out of love with that franchise, that game, that company, that what they were passionate of, and takes a different turn. Or professional gamers, when a big name in, I don't know, let's say Dota 2 quits and enters a totally different or another game like LoL or something like that. So those moves happen under this type of energy, falling in and out of love. Or for those of you who are single, the best possible expression of this energy, something happens in your life where the trophy comes to you, life's trophies, one of life's trophies, exactly because you're single. And the way you managed your single status was the Saturn and Neptune in the picture. What you did so right, life blesses you big time. And of course, you are gonna be very happy with yourself and your single status and your life generally, a moment. But this can also play out when an irresistible attraction happens and you're sucked into something, a romance, well, Neptune. It doesn't even have to be all that real, just have reality attached to it because it's conjunct Saturn. Saturn needs some real. Or, for example, this is exactly when someone met their big love of life who became their husband, wife in a computer game, online game, World of Warcraft, or something like that. That is under this energy. The person feels so I don't know, safe in a sense that they're they are in an alternative universe. Cupid's arrow will never in a trillion years hit them, find them. Cupid is not there. Well, surprise, surprise, Cupid was there. It just comes to love cannot be stopped. Like, to be totally honest with you, I personally experienced romance or, Neptunian expression, flirt, strong sympathy that was taken outside of game as well in gaming, World of Warcraft, for example. So I know how real that, but before it happened to me, I heard many others. Like when I lived in England, I had a colleague who met her husband in Lord of the Rings Online or something like that. And I found it so funny, and I thought to myself, how can that actually work? Because it's fantasy. Well, she was a very happy woman. And of course it can work because fate used online gaming because path of least resistance, right? That was the simplest way to connect them and the easiest way. Less energy for the divine mechanism, fate's executioner, the divine mind, right? That was the easiest path. Of course, it used it. So, yes, this energy can play out, but it can also play out in the not so pleasant ways. However, remember, Saturn and Neptune trine this Venus and they're retrograde. So, on one hand, fate is working. Whatever happens now is gonna open a path for you or close something. Because Pluto, many times it's, ending. Like in tarot, Pluto itself is judgment. That's a very strong fated card. But Scorpio is death card. Pluto rules Scorpio. So permanent transformation. So endings or strong decisions at this moment. And decisions can be safe and sound because Mercury is already covering new ground. It's out of its retrograde shadow. It's aiming for Virgo to move into its home of Virgo. So, yeah, this energy will feeling plus mind Mercury. But when I say mind, even the realizations from July onwards, whatever you've been contemplating on, feeling, analyzing, etc., but also long-term contemplation and realization, Saturn and sorry, Neptune, and also higher thinking, the power of your highest intelligence, what decisions or what fated events are happening at this moment. These are clearing way for your future. So even if they're not so pleasant. Now let me exemplify not so pleasant. You just realize that a relationship, even though love is there, but it's not the kind of love that makes anyone happy. So you need to transform it, even if it's very, very painful. Or love is gone. Love is simply not there anymore. Having to end a career, having to end a job, having to end a situation. Child needs to leave home. You will need to see the good in that. But of course, honor the pain that if you're a parent and you had a very strong relationship, close relationship with the child, maybe the child was your best friend and they have to leave. Of course, they will leave either because some big beginning happens for them, moving in with their boyfriend, girlfriend, uni, work. So something good is happening for them because you're happy for them too, but the pain is still there. Pluto opposite Venus, the duality. Pluto in Aquarius, the duality of it, happiness and pain together. So stuff like that. And there is another energy at play here where we have Uranus still squaring the Sun in Virgo. So this can represent uncomfortable information, uncomfortable truth that we need to accept, that we need to work with, we need to sit down with. We're not bypassing it. We're not mitigating it. We're not escaping from it. We're sitting down and, for example, Virgo, Gemini, either brainstorming, figuring out, or sometimes this energy is where gradually need to take steps. Like, for example, get a loan from a bank or from an authority, get some help from state or whatever. Well, it's not gonna be one-time trip, Gemini. It's gonna be a series of appointments that need to be done, and some of them are uncomfortable decisions, waiting. Saturn, Neptune on one hand, and Sun in Virgo squaring Uranus in Gemini. It needs to be done. It's uncomfortable, but it needs to be done. Remember, next year, whatever discomforts we face now, we're going to be very grateful because the way is already paved for the new or for things to get on track. Because Saturn and Neptune uh start going back into Aries. I do believe February next year, and then Uranus will need to retrograde out of Gemini back into Taurus, finish his job, and then by May next year, if I'm not mistaken, Uranus is back forever, as in for good into Gemini. And then basically all of the planets are in new territory. We must discount Jupiter because Jupiter moves fast. So Jupiter by next summer will already be in a new sign altogether. So in Leo. So that energy is where everything really needs to be. The new, moving to the future, moving forward, moving towards building up whatever we need to build and sustain and etc. Like again, Pluto is for good in new territory. By February next year, Saturn, Neptune are for good in new territory, especially Neptune because it will stay in Aries for a good number of years. By next year, Uranus is in new territory for the next 7 years. And then Jupiter will be in new territory in Leo. So everything is fast forwarding. And then in 2026, the nodes will enter a Leo Aquarius axis. And that's very, very important because the North Node in Pisces, it's if it's the future, that is just a dream, a fantasy, a feeling, an emotion, because Pisces is, well, a temporal, but it's more like of the past, right? Ancient, whatever is Pisces. Ancient wisdom, ancient culture, archaeological findings under the ocean, under layers of sediments, etc. Aquarius, however, is the future. So when the North Node is in Aquarius, that's like the proper future energy. Well, as the North Node starts reaching the first decan of Pisces, that's already has more to do with the future. Dreaming it up or spirit, etc., etc. But for the moment, the North Node is in the second decan of Pisces, so that's Scorpionic energy. Sorry, that's Cancerian energy. So that means that things need to stabilize. Things need to settle down. Like the shell needs to harden until things can fully get back on track. So that's what's happening right now. Things coming together. It's a mix of elimination energy and a mix of waiting for things to harden, right? Like when the concrete needs to harden, that type of energy is going. So this is mixed into all of that. This Venus opposing Pluto. Because fated things happen right now in relationships, sensually, creationally. So whatever heaviness might be in your life now, just understand that this is paving the path for the future. So I do hope this helped. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, bye for now.